So I've been thinking about. A lot about what I need to do as a personality to move forward. The importance of branding as a caster, and something I realized that I don't really do a whole lot. I don't put myself out there as a product of a personality, right? I don't even, like, my stream is more streaming secondary and just me playing Dota as a primary thing. So I've been thinking about, okay, what do I need to do as a personality to grow my brand, which is important. And one of the things that I decided to do was actually try and do a vlog. Now, I'm not going to do a traditional, like, Frankfurt Majors, what I did, because I personally don't think that I am a riveting enough personality that people really want to know what happened when I got to the hotel, how many times did I take a shit per day, stuff like that, right? It's not really, I don't think I'm that interesting, right? But I think that people, what they might be interested in would be perhaps some of the things that I've learned going to these events, and something that I definitely learned from this event, which would be about panel work. Just a real quick wrap up the majors and my experience. It was a lot of fun. The majors was, I think, probably one of my favorite events that I've ever worked, right behind the ESL 1 Frankfurts and TI itself. I'm really looking forward to, hopefully I get invited to the rest of the majors, but I'm really looking forward to having these kind of premier tournaments every single quarter or so. I think it's going to be a big boost to the community. But the majors as a whole was a lot of fun. The experience of the crowd, especially on the last few days, was amazing. A lot of people came up to me and talked to me and had me sign their autograph and stuff like that, which was always very flattering. It's actually one of my favorite parts of events is being able to meet fans and stuff. So that was good. But the event itself, this was the first time that I had ever done any real panel work. Previous gigs, like I did panel for like the MLGs, just because we had such a small number of people that it was like, if you're not casting, you're on panel, etc., just because we didn't hire a whole lot of talent for MLG, just because that's the way it is. So that's pretty much it, and that's not a whole lot of experience to go off of, and even then I was more of a caster first, but here it almost felt like I was a panel member first. At least if you think about prestige-wise, my panel, which was for the grand finals, was more prestigious than my casting, which I casted like the last match on the second to last day, right? So it almost felt like my panel was more important than my casting to some extent, which is not something that I necessarily want to transition into. I much prefer being a commentator, but I do really enjoy doing panel work, and I hope I'm able to do more. In fact, that's one of the reasons I'm making this vlog, is just to kind of think about some of the things that would help me improve being a panel member and how I can move forward in developing certain skills. So one of the things that the panel for this event was different than I think people expected, because the way that TI set things up. The TI panel was very, like, especially like the last 2 days, it was like all analytical, right? You didn't have Shiver, Period Flags, Nahaz. Like, you didn't have any of those guys that actually brought energy or warmth or humor or any of the various, like, charismatic things that they bring to the table. It was just, like, strictly pure all analysts. And I actually felt that that wasn't the best way to run the panel. I personally didn't think that was very good. I would have liked to see more of the people that I mentioned before towards the end of the days, because I thought they brought something to the panel that made it more interesting for the common viewer to watch, and even me. Like, obviously, I'm all about the analysis, and listening to that is amazing, but I even felt like there was times where it was just kind of like stale, the back and forth. There wasn't anybody who was really trying to engage the camera that much, or engage Red Eye. It was just Red Eye, question, answer, question, answer, back and forth. So there wasn't somebody who was really trying to keep conversation flowing. So I think that was that this major, they had almost not the opposite approach, but it was definitely more like about the energy and banter and making funny moments, essentially, which I think this major was okay at doing, but it wasn't amazing. It was definitely, I think everyone's perhaps a little bit inexperienced going into panel work. I don't think there's anybody who's like, as a panel member, is like super experienced and is perfect at what they do. I really don't think that we have that kind of talent in the Dota scene. So it's going to take time to develop. But so I think that's why. Like, I'm not 100% sure about anything. Obviously, I talked a little bit to the people of ESL and to Red Eye, and like, okay, what do you want out of this panel? What are you expecting me to do? And it feels like I was expected to, at least the way that I thought about it, is I wanted myself to be like a Sheever, a Pyrian Flax, a Bruno that was able to bring a higher level of analysis, right? So I was meant to be able to bring energy, which I think is the thing that I did the best. Humor, which I didn't do very well at all, I don't think. But still able to engage at a higher level of analysis with Merlini or with Cinderin or Jacob or whatever. I mean, let's be real. Like, Jacob, it's fine. I can match his analysis. But there were a lot of technical things that I learned. So, for example, the importance of keeping short yet eloquent, right? The importance to be able to express your mind but not go overboard, because you need to give the other panel members space to talk, which is something that obviously Nahaz has been hit on quite a bit. And I know he's trying to fix as much as possible. It's, you know, that's what his job is as a professor, is to talk a lot. The other thing was matching energy. So it was kind of interesting to hear Red Eye talk about the way that panel members should be able to interact with each other, and how the highest energy panel member needs to be met by the other panel members. So if you have someone that's relatively low, it's okay, you know, Merlini or Purge or one of those like very monotone, calm influences, you know, they can be kind of like that, but if you have somebody high energy, like the Haas, for example, very high energy, I think I'm pretty high energy as well. It's you need those other panel members to rise their energy a bit, so there's not such a, you know, peak and valley situation. But it also makes for a better dynamic as well if you do have somebody who's a bit higher energy and a bit lower energy, because it creates this, you know, kind of wave, I feel. So that was the first thing that I kind of learned, and something that was kind of, you know, going through my head during this whole entire event. The other thing going into this event was something I really wanted to do well as a panel member. So obviously, it being my first time, I did a lot of studying and stuff, and thought about, okay, what makes good panel, and I looked at other esports. You know, the DreamHack CS Major was the last one that I did, and that I watched, and I learned a lot from that. One of the things, I actually watched a bit of Thorin's video about panel, and he had this really good analogy that made me have a bit of clarity of thought about, you are actors on a stage, and essentially there are people who are good at shooting, and there's people who are good at being shot, and there's important to have both of those members, right? Like, not everyone gets to be the shooter. Not everyone gets to fire the shots and be the banter on the panel. There are only certain people who can do that, but it's equally important to have somebody who is good at getting shot. So you can't just have somebody who, for example, Red Eye at TI, I think a great example was Red Eye at TI was trying to create moments, banter, etc. at the TI panel, and none of the analysts were really able to like interact with that in any good way. Like, there was no one firing shots back. The reactions were a little awkward. It felt like Red Eye was just being a bully, right? Because he was trying to create, you know, banter, and it was just completely one-sided. And then we had that whole moment where, you know, Mad waved the white flag and stuff, and it kind of made up for the shots that Red Eye was firing before. But if you watched the panel, it felt like, you know, there was the Reddit threads too, like, oh, Red Eye's such a dick, you know, and such like that. Well, that's what happens if you don't have panel members that are able to respond in an appropriate way. So I kind of learned, okay, I'm probably not the person who's going to be doing the shooting. I'm probably the person who's going to be taking the shots, especially with hair like this. So I kind of read into, like, you know, the way that people reacted on panels and what I like seeing. And it all came down to the importance of, like, showing that you are having a good time. So if somebody makes a joke at your expense, you know, making sure to actually laugh out loud. Like, especially if you actually find it funny, not trying to be dishonest or anything, but if you actually find it funny, you know, laughing out loud. LOL. That's actually really important. Smiling, you know, just, you know, remember that you're joking around with your buddies, that it's not all like, oh, you made a shot at me and, you know, now I have to somehow get him back. You know, it's just like, you need to show the audience that it's not just a bully scenario, that you are having a good time with your buddies, and they'll feel less awkward about that kind of scenario if they know that. So it's kind of like, I kind of refer to it as being the heel. Being the heel on the panel, the kind of person who takes all the shot, which is exactly what Jacob's job was actually most of the time, was for him to like just take the shots, because he was the one who was constantly there, and Red Eye was the one who was usually creating banner. So in a way, he was the opposite to what Red Eye was, right? He was like, Red Eye was the host, and the way I think about it, Red Eye was the host and Jacob was the anti-host, in that he was like, Red Eye was creating banter and firing shots, and Jacob was taking shots and, you know, reacting and firing some shots back. But that kind of felt like his role, and I realized, you know, that's kind of most likely that's my best trait, I think, is being the heel, being able to, like, especially in the Blitz Cap dynamic, right? People complain, you know, oh, it's unprofessional, or, you know, you guys are getting too mean, etc. And I realized, okay, I don't need to fire as many shots back at Blitz. I can just take the shots and show that it's all in good fun and have a good time, and we can move on from there. And it keeps it a little bit shorter as well, making it so people who don't like that kind of content don't have this prolonged experience where they feel more and more awkward over time. So I think the greatest example of this was when we had the panel with me, Blitz, and Pyrian. And the thing was that Pyrian, going into it, I don't think really wanted to do the panel, not work-wise or anything, but just because I think he felt uncomfortable that he wasn't going to be able to bring, you know, the analysis that people wanted. Obviously, people have had bad reactions to Pyrian Flax, like, oh, why is he there? He doesn't bring any panel. Like, that's exactly why he's not there to bring analysis. He's there to bring the moments, right? And he did exactly that, right? So he was talking about it. He's like, I'm not sure if I really want to be on it. Purge and I were kind of talking in this Twitter DM thing to him about it, and it was just like, Purge is like, you know what, just go on there, make fun of Blitz, you know, Cap and Blitz will do the heavy lifting when it comes to analysis. And I told Pyrian, I was like, look, just make fun of my hair, and it's all good. And Pyrian's like, I can do that. and then it created that moment, right, where Pyrian made fun of my hair. As a bald person, I feel completely, you know, this is unacceptable, blah, blah, blah. And it created a moment. And it was, you know, it went up on Reddit. It was popular. People enjoyed it. This is what the panel was supposed to be about. And then, you know, I made this, and then it led to another moment, right, where I made this, like, silly analogy about a beautiful woman, you know, who's crying and makeup running all over, and beautiful mess, right? That's what I described Fnatic as, or something like that. And then that created another moment where Blitz was able to describe me as kind of like that, and he said something like, you know, Cap is only handsome because the rest of us are also ugly, et cetera, right? It was another, like, brilliant, funny moment, standard classic Blitz. And that was, you know, something that was great that the panel created, and you just gotta create content for panel members to be able to play around with, right? And I think that we're still kind of new and awkward, and we're not really sure how to do that. I mean, I think in general, Dota panels are actually very lackluster. If you look at the fighting game community and the few panels that they've had, if you look at the League communities, which I think is a much more better example of one-to-one, they have a lot more experience in doing this, a lot more professional, and they're able to, you know, actually keep, you know, just the conversation going. It's just the conversation going is important enough. The CSGO, right? I said I watched this DreamHack, was it in Bucharest or whatever DreamHack CS1 was before the major. I watched that with Thorin. Richard Lewis was the host, and a rotating panel such as I'm forgetting some names, but it was mainly Thorin that really stood out to me, who made a really good panel member. People think he's an asshole, and he probably is. I don't know the guy at all. I watch his videos. I think he does really good content. I agree with like 70% of the things he says, and, you know, 30% of the things I disagree with. But, you know, it's still it's still interesting. But he was really good at being able to fire shots and create moments and, just always keeping the conversation going. And that was like, okay, this is, I can see what that created so much value, right? And I think that was something that, I want to be able to do on a panel, but I'm not sure if I can necessarily do it, at least not yet anyway. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable enough on a panel. I'm a fairly introverted person. And I think that's why Dota panels are actually not as good as other esports, is because, what was that Arteezy video? He said that, all Dota players are introverts. It's true for the talent too, I think, for the most part. Blitz also said something at one point in time that kind of stuck in my head. He said that that's why he liked Dota players so much, was because, like, most of the dedicated Dota players, like, we all just have something fucked up inside of us, something that's gone wrong in the past, or something that, that doesn't quite naturally tick. I mean, if you think about it, how, us playing Dota, it just really doesn't make sense. A game that makes you so mad and so, upset all the time, and you still love it and you still play it. I mean, it's like masochism. I don't know. You just keep doing it. Something's got to be a little broken inside, right? And I think we all kind of like relate to each other on that level. So maybe that's why Dota panels aren't very good. Hopefully they'll get better in the future. I think experience is the biggest thing that's needed right now, as more people get more experience being on panels, more interactions with their fellow talent. I think that's something that's big that the majors will bring, is being able to interact with the talent that you don't work with day to day on, multiple levels, where you're able to really understand each other and make jokes, and the jokes that you make, in the after party, or, when you go out drinking that night or whatever, those jokes can then show up on the panel, right? And it can create a lot more. So that's kind of what I learned from being on the panel. I went then after the panel, and I felt like it went pretty okay. I had a lot of self-criticism. I don't think I really I didn't hit the points that I wanted to hit. I guess maybe I set my goals perhaps too high, but I didn't really reach those, so it was kind of disappointing in that regard. But I was still moderately happy. I went on Reddit and read some comments. There were some comments that actually made me a bit depressed, because most comments that I read, I have a really thick skin. I've been in the Marine Corps. I've dealt with people, throwing insults, screaming directly into my ear. I've dealt with all that. So most insults don't really go by me. The reason when these ones kind of got to me is they weren't insults at all. They were just purely criticism. And they had a good ring of truth to them. That was talking about, because they were actually, would phrase it, it was like, I like Hap as a caster, but I don't like him as an analyst, and they would explain their reasoning. And some of them felt like I didn't add much to the conversation, and I can see that sometimes. Like, I think sometimes, though most of the time, if I didn't have anything to add to the conversation, I would go silent and let the other two battle members talk, because they obviously have something. And that's something when you go into drafts and something like that. Like, sometimes you're really on point and you know exactly what's going to be happening next, and then other times you just don't really get what's going on. I think it happens to actually every analyst. I've talked to Blitz, and Blitz has had, like, even just casting games, he's just kind of like, I really didn't know what was going on in that game. I felt like I couldn't provide good analysis because the game was perhaps a little bit weird, or I didn't understand the strategy that they were employing, or those sort of things. So I felt like I stayed quiet and just would latch, like, if somebody said something and I had something to add to that, like if it sparked a thought in my head that I can continue that forward, I would chime in then, but I would be quiet if I really felt like I didn't get what was going on. But there were moments that I thought I brought some pretty good analysis. I think, like, I had a couple of, like, last pick Brewmaster calls that I think were on point that no one else really suggested, and the teams ended up going that route. There was, I remember, the TA gyrocopter call on the 3-4 that the team ended up picking up. I thought that was pretty on point. I brought up Darkseer a couple times, especially in the final series, and they never picked up Darkseer. In fact, it wasn't even touched at all. But I talked to Misery afterwards, and Misery was like, we really should have gone for Darkseer. Maybe that could have been a bit better for us. But it goes to show, just because it didn't show up in the draft doesn't mean that it wasn't, talked about. It wasn't a good idea. And I think another one was the Invoker, right? The Invoker last pick instead of the Alchemist. That I talked about it, and it was with a couple different pros. This was the very last game, and they were like, "Yeah, that actually could have worked, just as well, because just the way the Aquaswick and Invoker would have interacted in that lineup would have been a lot more aggressive, while the Alchemist was perhaps a bit too passive in some ways. But it's neither here nor there. It was just I just wanted to be able to, after I finished the event and before I read any criticism, I thought about, my calls that I made. I went to several pros and I was just like, hey, these were the kind of ideas that were going through my head. What do you think? Was this a retarded call? Was this good? Do I not know what's going on? Do I not understand the meta well enough? And I felt like the pros that I talked to, they gave me some pretty good feedback, and they kind of absolved me, I guess, in a way. I guess that's what I was looking for. I was like, if I made a call that I really didn't, was kind of a little out there and didn't make any sense, perhaps, to some people, I wanted to be able to talk to a pro and have them, talk to me, and it was like, hey, was this wrong? Am I stupid for thinking about that, going that route? And it seemed like it was fine. But, there's a lot of different reasons. Credibility is really important, I think, in Dota, because it is such a world of gray. So I know there's probably going to be an adjustment period where seeing me on a panel and hearing my thoughts on the draft and analysis and such, people may not place that much value in it, but maybe it'll adjust over time. It's also my first time really doing it, and I was pretty nervous, so maybe that affected me. It probably, again, I don't really... I set my own personal goals for this panel, and I don't think I really reached them, but I don't know, I came decently close, because I do want to work more panels, and that's the important thing. That's why I'm kind of creating this vlog and talking about what I learned, and, I think people would just find that more interesting than your standard, I went to the hotel, I ironed my shirts, shit like that, because I want to be more of a panel member. I think it prompts me to prepare in a bit different way for events that makes me a more well-rounded Dota player and Dota personality. It displays my branding a bit more, which, that's something I've talked about. I don't really do a whole lot. As a commentator, I have the least brand awareness, I would say, of the big four that, I'm kind of competing with in a way. So I needed to do more of that, and the panel will do, open that up for you, I think, in many ways, to show more of your personality. And honestly, just working more at an event is fun. If I had my way, I would cast, the first 2 series of the day, and I would be on panel the last 2 series of the day. Ideally, that's what I would want, to be such a valued Dota personality that I could get away with working that much. Obviously, that's super greedy, and that should never really happen. But in an ideal world, for me personally, I would work every single game if I could. I ended up talking to Red Eye about some of the comments, and he said one thing. Let's just pass over that. I think the biggest thing that I got from talking to Red Eye is over the last 2 years is that the importance of having informed opinions, someone who, not just judging yourself by the democratic Reddit vote that is out there, but being able to have people that you trust, who know what they're talking about, to talk to you about what you can do better or what they thought about your performance, because I think that means so much more than reading a Reddit thread that has 10 downvotes, but you still read it anyway, right? Way more important to read somebody like Red Eye, who has a veteran, decades of experience. He was able to give me a very good perspective, I think, on everything. But yeah, I don't know. I hope this wasn't whiny at all. I just had some thoughts about the major, and I was like, I should really start doing vlogs, so yeah. Oh, I'm gonna go shave my mohawk, so yeah, I'll be right back. So yeah, I am now back to, well, if I lose the beard, maybe I'll back to boot camp recruit status. Yeah, I don't know. People gave me a lot of shit for that Mohawk. There was a lot of people who came up to me and was like, Mohawk's really cool, man. There was other people who were like, what are you fucking... I mean, nobody in person, obviously, because the people who say these things don't have the balls to say it in person. But they were like people, oh, you fucking child. What are you supposed to be professional? Yeah. I didn't shave it for them, though. I shaved it just because I was getting bored of it. I was tired of seeing the Mohawk. I was just like, eh. It was the same thing with the last hairstyle. I was just like tired of the Pidgeotto look. So, wait till it grows back. I don't know what I'm going to do next. You are more than welcome to leave your suggestions and what kind of hairstyle I should have next, I guess, in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe I'll never do it again.